Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Heikki Hassila, and I represent a company called Pharmatory. So thank you very much for taking the time this afternoon out of your busy schedules to come here and listen to the presentation that I'm going to give you in the next 20 minutes or so. To introduce our company, just with a few words to begin with, Pharmatory, as we are now, was founded in 2001, so we have a little bit more than 10 years of working experience together. And we provide process R&D and GMP manufacturing services of APIs and key intermediates, basically operating from the medchem scale to phase 1. We have GMP quality system in place, and the quality system is audited by both the authorities as well as our customers. And during the 10 years, we have handled something like 400 to 500 different customer projects. So we have a lot of experience of many kinds of things. We won't be surprised so easily anymore. The project management works very closely in the projects. So if you want to have information about your project, you can find it easily and you know who to contact. Currently, we employ 19 people, so we have no bureaucracy in the company. Everybody can interact freely with each other. So the information that everybody has is readily available to all of us. Privately owned company, owned by the management team and 5 employees of the past and the present. And some words about our service package so that you can get an idea of the concept that we are working in. As I mentioned, we work basically from medchem scale to GMP clinical batches phase 1, and everything process development, analytical development, and other analytical tools needed to support the manufacturing part, and also other pieces to support the registration and filing of the compound. We can also provide stable and radioactive labeling for example, metabolism studies or ecotox studies. And most recently, we started working with Enzymes to provide us with new and efficient tools to again support the manufacturing and scaling up processes. And in the next few slides, I will tell you more about the enzyme project. Basically, why we wanted to start using enzymes is that everybody knows drug substances are not getting any simpler these days. At the same time, requirements for stereochemical and chemical purity are also increasing, so more and more pieces need to be under control in the development and discovery process. Everything needs to be done cost efficiently and also taking the environment into account. And also very important is to supply the compounds quickly for testing, so you cannot afford spending several months for process development on each different compound that you are going to test and introduce. And when we started the project, the key development points from the beginning were that we decided to use commercially available enzymes, which are known to be robust and available also in larger scale from the beginning. So we don't need to change any suppliers or need any time to develop the enzyme. In the beginning, we can use it as it is and scale up using the tool, just like we would use any other reagent, chemical reagent. We use established procedures so that we can screen the enzymes we have quickly and evaluate whether they can do the trick we want. Then also scale the reaction up efficiently. I will show you an example of that later. And also try to introduce some kind of complementary techniques to the same target. So depending on the interests and the starting point, we can use the most appropriate method. And during the next 15 minutes or so, I will show you a lot of examples. So basically, hopefully I won't go into too much theoretical discussion. I want to give you some images that hopefully catch your attention. So if you find something that you might find suitable in your own processes, please come and talk to us later. This is an example of something we did for a customer already, classical kinetic resolution using lipase enzyme, which is very simple system because you only need the enzyme, the starting material, an isolation source, in this case, or acyl source, in this case isopropene acetate, an organic solvent, so this works in under anhydrous conditions. You convert the R enantiomer of the alcohol into an acetate, and the S enantiomer is left free as an alcohol. You separate these, and in this case also, this was not so easy molecule, but we were able to get up to 98% EE for the S alcohol that we wanted. We didn't have any look at the R acetate because it was no interest to us. To facilitate the separation of those two, you can also use something like succinic anhydride as the acyl source. So you generate a kind of acidic fragment and then the alcohol. So the separation of those two is supposed to be easier than the acetate and the alcohol. And this also gave us the same EE, which we were very happy with. The problem with the resolution, of course, is that you can only get the maximum yield of 50%. And for example, this case, the starting alcohol is not so easy. So you cannot really afford throwing away half of the material. And the next step to go a little bit further was to start thinking about the selective reduction of the ketone using keto reductases. And these enzymes have basically, during the recent years, 5 years or so, 10 years, undergone a lot of devolution. So they are now becoming very efficient tools for anybody to use. And a little bit background information about the enzymes. You can have a class called natural enzymes that, of course, reduce the ketone to the chiral alcohol. And keto reductases need a cofactor to keep the system running. With the natural enzymes, you have to have another enzyme to regenerate the cofactor and have the catalytic cycle running. In this case, glucose dehydrogenase, it oxidizes glucose to the lactone and then eventually to the acid. This is the one that drives the reaction efficiently to conclusion, and this is the driving force of the reaction. And more recently, to make my life more simple, enzymes that can recycle the cofactor themselves have been developed. And the system in this case is much simpler. So you only have isopropanol in the reaction mixture. And then it's the active reducting enzyme itself that reduces the cofactor again to be used in the upper reduction that we want. This is the same molecule, basically, what I showed you earlier. In this case, the enzymes were screened, and we came up with the natural enzyme. So we have to have glucose in the reaction mixture, and also the glucose dehydrogenase in place. Once the initial screening was done and then the enzyme was selected, we never saw the other enantiomer, so the reaction was always completely selective. The enzyme never failed in this respect. Just the reaction conditions a little bit, 30 grams a liter with very minimum process development from the scale up. You need to have reaction controlled or the pH controlled during the reaction because you generate the acid from glucose. So to keep the enzyme active, you need to adjust the pH by adding sodium hydroxide or other base to the mixture. In all scales, reaction time always 6-7 hours. So basically, we could have the one batch running in one day. Scale from 50 milligrams to 360 grams, I already mentioned, with very minimum process development. And during this process, the system never backfired. Like in chemical scale-up, if you do from medchem scale to several 100-gram scale, eventually, I think at some point, inevitably, you will find some problems, the system failing you. But in this case, it didn't happen. The only reason for us to develop the conditions a little bit was to increase the concentration so that we could use a little bit smaller reactors. And then using the system, we prepared 1 kilogram of the building block. And then the 4 next steps from there to the final API. So this is basically the system of how we want to do this. To start from the medchem scale, to produce the expensive intermediate using enzymes, and then also prepare or convert that into the final API. And this didn't take so much time. in the lab. So basically, more time was spent on waiting for the decisions to continue than actually to do the work in the lab. So we were all, everybody in our lab was very surprised how reliable and smooth the process was. Let me then show you some examples of the screening to make this more concrete. This is a reduction of simple acetophenone. A set of 24 enzymes was screened in 24 hours reaction time. So you can see the conversion profile from here. Most of the enzymes give you almost full conversion. And combining that with the selectivity data, only run analytical run from each reaction. Conversions are good throughout the line in this case. Selectivities vary, but which is good because you have a variation, then you probably have a hit. If you wanted the R enantiomer, then that would be the enzyme we would go for because both the activity and selectivity are good. And then accordingly for the S product, we would pick up enzyme from there. And that would, in just 1 or 2 days, that would give us a good starting point where to go. Screening transition metals for the same conversion, I can't even imagine how much time it would take and how much it would cost. About the scope a little bit, I will show you a few more screenings, but I'm not going to go into details with them. So just have a look at the pictures and enjoy the ride. This is acetophenone adding 1 methylene group to get the propiophenone. So again, you can see how the system looks like. We have enzymes with good selectivity towards both enantiomers. Activity is good. Then adding 1 more methyl group to build an isopropyl moiety. You see a little bit more variation in the activity, but selectivity still looks the same. 1 more methylene unit, you see the activity goes down quite a lot, and interestingly, the selectivity map looks also very different. But this is not the key point. I think the key thing is to show that we can quickly decide. Just do 1 screening, and then we can decide whether or not this looks promising. To take a little bit further, to have a phenyl group instead of the isopropyl unit. You can see again big effect on the selectivity. And adding 1 more methylene unit between the carbonyl group and aromatic group. So basically, you can generate the same data. All these experiments you can do in less than 2 weeks. Most of the time is used in getting the analytical data. So I think very efficient screening of the catalysts. Okay, then let me talk a little bit about the preparation of chiral amines using transaminases. This is the cofactor that is used. Basically the same kind of screening data. In this case, we have to have the reaction running for a little bit longer time to get conversions. And the same selectivity chart, basically combining the activity and selectivity chart, we can make decisions on how to go forward. This looks like the compound you've seen before, but it's not the same. This is now the complete API on this side, and we just did this reaction to see whether we could convert only 1 part of an existing API to create something new, for example, a new lead compound or a new candidate from an existing compound. And you can see the activity data here. So we can get quite reasonable conversions within 5 days. The time is not so important. The main thing is that the reaction goes forward. And on the HPLC, we only saw the starting material and the product. So the enzyme didn't do anything else except for the desired conversion. And the molecular weight is 450, so you know that there are many other functionalities that chemically would be destroyed if we try to do the same thing. Okay, then you can also use transaminases to make a resolution, which is a very fast reaction. So basically you convert the active enantiomer into a ketone, and then you can separate by extraction. So this is a very fast and efficient reduction. In 1 hour, the reaction didn't go any further, even though we left it running. So you can see that with the R-selective enzyme, we convert the R enantiomer to the ketone, and only S enantiomer is left behind. Completely optically pure, and using the other reverse selectivity, we can get the other enantiomer in very quickly. And then applying lipases to the resolution like we did with the alcohols. You use a little bit modified acid acyl source now because this oxygen coordinates to the active site and it speeds the reaction up. So again, you convert the R enantiomer into an amide, and the S enantiomer is left free. You can separate it by simple extraction. I did the reaction, or left the reaction running for as long as it proceeded. And after separation, I got the S-amine in complete zero selectivity. You can also do it solvent-free if the amine is a liquid. Other acyl donors, ethyl acetate, ethyl butyrate, but the reaction in this case are much slower because of the lack of this activating oxygen. Okay, how about the R enantiomer then? You can hydrolyze it back under rather acidic conditions depending on the other structure. Structural unit in our molecule. You can also do it under basic conditions. These are of course very harsh, but they work for these molecules. Now you can see that the reaction went probably a little bit over because the EE for the amide is lower than desired. What can you do then? You can use the same enzyme basically under aqueous conditions to hydrolyze it back to the amine. And again, you can see that the EE is brought up from about 94, 95 to back to the acceptable level of 98.5. And actually the enzyme reaction is the fastest of this all because again the oxygen activates the enzyme. So basically complementarity, like I mentioned in the beginning. If you have racemic amine, you can use both enantiomers, you can use lipase. If the amine is cheap and you only need one enantiomer, you use transaminase to destroy the other enantiomer, which is very quick reaction. But if the amine is expensive and you don't want to lose any material, then you can selectively prepare it using the transaminase reaction in the way I showed you before. Okay, and finally, I would like to talk a little bit about something completely different that we've been doing during the last year. I showed you an example of using the keto reductases for reduction of carbonyl compounds. And basically the driving force of this reaction is the oxidation of isopropanol to acetone. And then running the cofactor cycle this way. However, if we could reverse the cofactor regeneration cycle, we should be able to convert this into an oxidation reaction, which is interesting because the world is full of efficient reduction methods, but clean oxidation methods are still very rare. At least I don't know so many clean and selective oxidation methods. So let's take you quickly through the process that we've done. We screen the enzymes for the reduction of the carbonyl compound because we know that that is fast reaction. All enzyme reactions are reversible. So you can do screening this way. I mentioned the natural enzymes that use glucose dehydrogenase and glucose. Those were excluded from this reaction because that cycle wouldn't be running the other way. So 19 enzymes out of the 24 kits we have. You can see the activity data here. After 24 hours, almost everything is complete. But we want to have the enzymes as active as possible, so we picked up the 5 most active ones. Then also screen the enzymes for the bottom side of the reaction. We used ethyl levulinate and did the same screening for the 5 enzymes that we selected in the previous run. You can see that the activity data, some are very active, some are not. So out of these 5, we selected 3 to go for the actual oxidation tests. And the big question is, of course, does it work? So the very early conditions, 1.5 equivalents of ethyl levulinate, a little bit of organic solvent to make everything soluble at 30 degrees. 5 hours, about 10% conversion, and over the weekend, 20, which is not much. But it shows that the concept works. The only thing we need to do is make it more efficient. And what we've done since then, instead of ethyl levulinate, we converted to ethyl acetoacetate. Same conditions. In 24 hours, we are almost 40% conversion. And what we've done actually last week, going from ethyl acetoacetate to methyl acetoacetate, which is very water soluble. Again, the same reaction conditions, which are completely unoptimized, something I just drew from the air for the first run. And you can see in 24 hours, we are almost up to 80% conversion. So I don't think we are going to optimize this reaction for synthesis of benzaldehyde because it doesn't make any sense. But it just shows that we can make the system work And now we would just need to find a little bit more interesting substrates for the reaction. And this is, I think, the key point of everything. This is the HPLC chromatogram from the reaction mixture. The only thing you see is the starting material, the product, a little bit of this compound here, something here. But I believe if he extract this, there will be nothing else. So it will be a completely clean reaction in that sense. And as a summary basically of this oxidation studies, we select the enzymes by screening, which is very fast. I've showed you many times. Utilize the reversibility of the enzymatic reactions. So basically in that way we can teach the enzymes to recognize the substrates in the positions that we want them to do the conversion. And then we can either selectively oxidize a single enantiomer of the racemic alcohol, or more importantly, like I showed you with the transaminases, we can do a regioselective conversion of some point of a more complex molecule. And I think that is something that you really cannot do today with oxidation reagents. So you either destroy all eggs or none of them. But hopefully with this tool, we can simply crack one of them out of many. So I hope next year I can be standing here again and tell you a little bit more examples of what we've been able to achieve here. So basically, why try pharmatory with your compounds? We use commercially available enzymes which are known to be robust, also available in large scale, so the process can be applied from medchem scale to pilot scale without any problems. Established procedures equaling speed. We have a lot of experience in process optimization on the chemical side. Screening accompanied by scale-up and manufacturing. I showed you where we took the chiral intermediate up to the final API. No IP risk, we are not interested in the IP, so the process is yours when it's finished. We also want to be a low barrier company to approach, so if you want to do one screening with us, we'll be happy to do that. And then on Friday we decide whether to continue on Monday with something else or not. And finally, some words of thanks to Professor Liisa Kanerva from University of Turku for helping us at least with the lipase work. And also the TEKES, the Finnish Funding Agency for Technology and Innovation, for some euros to help us to do this work. And most importantly, thank you very much for attentively listening to me today. And if you have any questions, please do come and visit us in this hall at stand E17, which is just a little bit that way. Thank you very much for your attention today. Okay.
Thanks for your presentation.
Thank
I
you.
have two short questions first. Your reaction times differ strongly, and what is the average turnover frequency you determine in your conversions? And second question is, what do you think about immobilization processes of enzymes with respect to enhanced stability or to enable continuously driven processes?
Yeah, so thanks for the questions. Actually, we didn't go that much into the details as far as the turnover numbers. So we basically treated the enzymes as we do treat the chemical reagents. If there is a need, then we can go to that level. But especially for the screening, we just wanted to see the bulk effect, because the main interest of ours is on the conversion itself. And especially in the early stages, I think it's important to get the material prepared. So, and in the next step, you can go further to the turnover numbers and stability of the enzymes. The lipases that were used in this study were all immobilized. The lipases were, I had one slide in the presentation, but I didn't have time to show it, where we had free enzyme against the immobilized one, and the reaction time was difference was hours against days. So the lipases were all immobilized. As far as I know, the more advanced enzymes are not so immobilizable yet. Maybe there are some examples, but it is not so practical approach yet, so that everything would be available as in immobilized form, also in large scale, because that is the thing we want to do. Thank you very much for your questions. Okay. Okay, maybe we can talk.
I was interested in knowing the average substrate concentration you're working in your screening.
I cannot tell you that at the moment because simply because I don't remember it. We use the standard conditions where you make a stock solution of the substrate and then you put that into every reaction. But I can give you the information later if you need.
Yeah, because on the selectivity point of view, it's very good, but I think concentration is also important if you want to get a cost-effective process.
Yeah.
You need to work at high concentration.
Yeah. I agree that that would be a kind of important issue, but in the beginning, of course, with the process development and optimization, you can increase the concentration for sure to some limit, and maybe you can use that concentration like we did. We only optimized the conditions to have a reasonable concentration for the first batch pilot scale batches, which means I think you can prepare your phase 1 batches with that quantity without having to invest too much on the enzyme development. But if the process or the product passes that hurdle, then I think it's definitely worth investing a little bit more into enzyme development so that you can get an enzyme that works under more concentrated solutions. But that hopefully is not necessary for the first batches so that you can get your pilot batches out very quickly. Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.